Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today is part 2 of a 2-part video series on making sugar lilies. I'm gonna link part 1 in the description box below, as well as somewhere in this video. Also in the description box, grab the template for this flower and all of the rest of the tools, equipment, dusts, and everything I'm using for the entire tutorial down there. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel before we get started, and let's finish up this flower. Welcome back. Now we are ready to finish up our lilies. What I've got here is all of my dried petals, my dried stamens, as well as my dried pistil. I've got some white tape that's been cut in half using a tape cutter. I've got some light green tape, which is to tape up the stems. The white tape is for the stamen stems. And then finally, I have some dusts, yellow, green, black, and red. So I tried to keep this as simple as possible. We'll use color theory. I'm gonna link my color theory video in the description box below, as well as somewhere in this video for you to check out. But with that said, let's tape up our stamen stems first, and then we can get right to dusting. Using my half-width white tape here, I'm going to give that a good stretch to make sure that the glue is activated. Grab one of my stamens, and then starting about 1 centimeter down, I'm going to begin taping, and I'm going to have this around a 45-degree angle away from the top of the stamen. Just give it a few twirls, keeping that really tight between your fingers so that the glue is really stuck onto the wire. Then push that all the way up so that it is right at the top. And then you can continue rolling it between your index and your thumb on your dominant hand, pulling it tight with your left hand, and allowing the tape to adhere to the wire. And don't put hand cream on before you do this, because it's going to make it very difficult for you. I'm going to go all the way, or almost all the way, to the bottom here. And these are going to be just a little bit shorter than our pistil, so you can basically use that as a gauge. You don't really need to tape further than that, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish all these up. So starting again about 1 centimeter down, pushing that up, and then just continuing to tape down. I give it a twirl right at the end after I've ripped off the tape to make sure it's nice and adhered. Now that all of our stamens are ready to go, we can get to dusting. I've put a bit of cornstarch onto my surface, and these are the colors of dust that we're going to be using today. So we've got yellow, green, red, which is like kind of a burgundy red, and then I've got Turkish black, which is like a navy kind of grayish black. This is just in case we need to mute down any colors. And then we're going to be able to mix these 3 colors in order to make everything for the petals. First color we want to make is a nice yellowy green color, and that is going to appear right at the base of our petals. So we want the center to be a slightly darker green, but still on the yellow-green spectrum. And then as we diffuse it outwards, I want it to become a little bit more yellow. So in order to achieve that, I want to mix 2 different hues. So first off, let's get some yellow here. Mix a bit of cornstarch into that. And if you'll remember from the color theory video, which again will be linked in the description box below, yellow is a more mild color, so you don't need quite as much of a stronger color like green or red in order to balance it out. So we're just gonna go in with a tiny bit of green on the side, and then we'll mix it in slowly. So I hardly needed any color there in order to get this yellow-green. This is still a bit too bright though. What I'll do is add a touch of that crimson kind of color, which will mute it down into a slightly warmer brownish hue, since the Crimson is the complementary color of green. So this is much better, a lot less vibrant neon green. So this is great for my kind of diffused color, which is going to go take up a little bit more space on the outside of the petal. And then let's create a second color, which is going to be slightly more green. So let's pull this over and get a little more green in there. Get some yellow. First, let's get a little bit of black to create a shade. So I'm just trying to deepen this slightly. So that's better. It's slightly darker than this. And then we'll add a bit of that crimson just to mute it down a little bit. Now we can adjust depending on what your color is looking like. So I think this looks pretty good. I just want to touch more green in there because this is going to be like the more intense color right near the base. I think that's better. I just want to add a tiny bit of cornstarch so it's not quite so dark. You just want to be careful when you're adding colors onto white petals because they can get really dark really fast. I'm actually going to do the same with this one as well, just to make sure it's not too intense. So I'm just doing like one little spot here and one little spot here, and we can always add more of the saturated hues into the cornstarch if it's not quite bright enough. Perfect. Let's get started on our petals. I want to get right into the base of this crevice. I'm going to start with the darker green. So I just load up my brush and then dab it on the side so that it's not too intense as we start. Then I'm just going to go in from the base and kind of dust upwards. I'm only dusting in that crease area right now. Then I want to diffuse it as it goes up. So we don't want it to be like a stark line where it starts and ends. I want to blend that out. Next, let's go in with our yellow. I'm actually going to grab another small brush for this because I think this one will be too big. Let's try this one out and see how it goes. I might actually switch this one to the yellow brush just because it's a little bit fluffier, and then this one to the green since it's a little more concentrated. So let's do that. I'm just going to use this brush here for this chartreuse type color. Now I'm just going to blend this out, being quite gentle with this color. This is still a white flower. We don't want it to turn green, but we want to be able to have some dimension in the base area. So I'm almost dusting in like a triangle or maybe a diamond type pattern and just blending out that color to make it a seamless transition between the yellow and the green. And again, concentrating more color at the base and diffusing it as we go upwards. So I think that's a good start. I just want to take a tiny bit of yellow and the crimson just to the side here. And I want to dust just the very tip of this. So I'm just going to go along like the tip and one of the edges just to add like that most subtle amount of color so it's not pure white. And I think that looks great. So I'm going to continue on with these. I'll show you with the new brush that I've chosen how it's going to turn out. So I'm going to start with that thinner brush. And let's go in the center, just with like kind of feathery motion so it doesn't get too filled with color in any one area. It's really nice and soft and blended out. So I think that looks good. Let's go in with the chartreuse color. Again, starting at the base and blending upwards in that kind of triangle shape. Making this one slightly more subtle than the last one. I think there was too much dust on the last one, which is fine. Usually the first one ends up like that. It's just a tiny, subtle dusting here. And then let's go in with that kind of brownish color we created here, and then just go along one of the edges and right at the tip. So it doesn't look too perfect. Perfect. I think that looks great. I'm going to continue on with all of these, and we need 6 in total for 1 flower, so that is what I'll do. All of the petals are dusted, and now we can move on to dusting the stamens and our pistil. Let's start with the pistil. And the colors I want to achieve here are a very mild yellowish color on the top, and then throughout the stem part here, I want to have a little bit of that rusty brown color mixed with like a really nice subtle yellow green. So I'm going to take that yellow brush that I was using before. I'm going to go into that color we mixed here, which was for the very tip and the edges, just with a touch of that crimson in it, because I don't want this to be too intense. I'm gonna just dab that on the tip. And I think that's good. Yeah, that looks nice. And next I want to go along the stem, so I'll use a slightly fluffier brush, and I'm going to use that same color, and I want to have a little bit of green as well. So just a tiny bit of that green, and I'm just going to support it as I dust it so it doesn't break. A bit darker at the bottom and diffusing upwards to be slightly lighter. And finally here, I want to add a little bit of that crimson-y brown color. Just to give it a little more dimension. Yeah, I think that looks great. And onto our stamens. So we're going to actually dust the base of the stamens just a little bit, and I actually like to use my fingers for this instead of a brush, although I don't know, we can try a brush first. But what I want to achieve is almost like the same ombre effect as here, but a little bit more subtle. Actually, I think we'll be mirroring the petals a little bit more. So we're gonna start with a little bit of that darker green at the base, and then we're gonna move into like the more yellowy green. Let's try with a brush first and see how it goes. So starting with the darker green at the base. And this doesn't need to be like very bright or anything. This will just help the stamens look like they're not just stuck in there. They're gonna blend a lot better with the flower this way. And grab a little bit of that yellow and just blend that together. Keep rotating the stamen as you go. I mean, that looks great. We don't need anything else. Let's finish up the rest of those. They don't have to be all the same, of course. We always want things to look slightly different, so don't worry if the dusting isn't identical for all of them. All of the components are now prepared, and I'm gonna clean all of this up and we can begin taping them together. I've finished dusting all of my petals and stamens and everything here, so we are ready to go on taping them together. My first step is going to be to pick out 6 petals that I'm happy with. And what I'm looking for when I'm trying to pick out these petals is, so we have 3 petals in the center that are going to go something like this. So these ones can be a little bit tighter at the base in terms of like the amount that I pinched it. And the outer ones, we can use ones that are a little bit more flat, like this one. So there isn't quite as big of a pinch at the base, and that will fit a little bit nicer on the outside like that. So I like these 3. They seem to be fitting together well. And then let's pick out a few more flat ones. Okay, I think these ones look good. Now let me grab one of my pistils and 6 stamens, and we're ready to go. I've got some of my tape here, just that half width light green tape, and I like to organize all of my petals first before I begin taping anything together. So I'll like bunch them up into the individual flowers, so it just makes taping much faster and easier for me. We're going to start in the middle of this flower, which will be the pistil, and then we'll work our way outwards. So we'll add the stamens next, we'll add the 3 inner petals after that, and then the 3 outer petals last. So I'm just butting this up right to the base of where the gum paste ends, giving that a little turn just to make sure it's nice and secure and it's not going to go anywhere. Since this is our base, we want it to feel nice and sturdy. And now we can begin attaching our stamens, which are going to go just below the tip of that pistil. So I'm going to do a couple at a time, and they don't have to be all exactly on the same level. So vary them just a little bit. Just to keep things interesting and make sure that it doesn't look too static or man-made. Great, so we've got this finished. I'm gonna tape like maybe an inch down, tear it off, and then make sure that's nice and snug. Everything there is looking good. Now we can begin adding our petals on. So if this is moving around everywhere, it's gonna make adding the petals on such a headache. Nothing's gonna stay in place. So we wanna make sure that our center is solid. So let's begin again at the same level. Just wrap it around once so it doesn't get too bulky. Then we can begin adding our petals. So I'm gonna bend all of these just right at the base. And these should be thick enough that it's not gonna break once you begin bending them. Then I want the petal aligned right to the base of that tape as well. And make sure that wire is completely covered by the tape as I go around. I'm only gonna go around once before adding on the next petal. So these are the 3 inner petals. Just see where each of them wants to fit in. Don't force any of these petals to go into a place that it just doesn't seem like the right fit. You can pick a new petal or just adjust it until you're happy with it. So I'm gonna go down a little bit just to make sure that these center ones are really nice and secured. And then let's go back up. Adjust these guys before we start adding on the outer ones. then we can begin just placing these on the outside. So I'm butting it up as close as I can get to the top without breaking anything. Just be very careful as you're adding them on. Take your time. Don't have to rush through this. And our final petal here. Just pull that tape, and then we're going to tape all the way down, keeping it really snug, to make sure that none of these petals go anywhere. Tear that off at the base, and then we get to have some fun. So we can begin playing with the placement of these petals, making sure that we like where all of them are headed. I think that looks pretty good. And the only thing left is to bend our stamens a little bit. So they should each have a little bit of their own personality. You don't want them all facing the same direction, or we don't want them all the stamens like pointing the same way, if that makes sense. And it is one nice thing about having taped these instead of added gum paste, we can still play with them now and they won't break on us. Once you're happy with everything, then you're ready to use this flower. It is all set to go. Next week, what I'm going to do is make a little arrangement with these lilies for like a very elegant cake, which you could use for Mother's Day since that is coming up, or for whatever you want. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this more in-depth type of tutorial, a 2-week, 2-parter, much more in-depth than we usually go here on YouTube. Thank you for watching and sticking around to the end. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and grab the template in the description box below. Leave me a comment and I'll see you next time.